The Occitano-romance family is a sub-branch of Romance spoken in southern France, eastern Spain, and Andorra, part of the bigger Gallo-Romance family. Within Occitano-romance, there are three main languages: Occitan, spoken in Occitania, the region of southern France; Catalan, spoken in Catalonia, Spain, Valencia, and the Balearic Islands; and Aragonese, spoken in Aragon, Spain. There are around 30,000 to 50,000 speakers in total as of 2017. Developing near the Ebro Basin and spreading through the Pyrenees Mountains, the Kingdom of Aragon was an early modern kingdom on the Iberian Peninsula. The Crown of Aragon was created when the Kingdom of Aragon and the County of Barcelona formed a union. Other Catalan-speaking counties had joined to make the Principality of Catalonia. While Valencia and the Balearic Islands were under the Crown's control by James the Conqueror, these two main territories' spoken languages did not intermix, or at least they didn't intermix a lot. With expansion, Catalan became the widespread language, while Navarro-Aragonese, an earlier form of the Aragonese language, remained in the west. The best-known proponent of Aragonese was Juan Fernández de Heredia, who wrote an extensive catalogue of literature and translated several works from Greek into Aragonese. In the year 1479, a new dynastic union joined the Crown of Aragon and Castile together by the Catholic monarchs. With the spread of Spanish, other sister languages were beginning to decline, including Catalan, Galician, and others. The death of Charles II of Spain led to the War of Spanish Succession. The defeat of allies of Aragon led King Philip V to prohibit the use of Aragonese in schools. The status of Spanish as the only official language in Aragon led to most of the autonomous community being primarily Spanish-speaking, with Aragonese spoken in northern areas. With the shift to democracy in 1978, literary works and studies of Aragonese grew, later being re-implemented into teaching in schools and as a language of daily communication. While still spoken in most of the northern areas, there are four main dialect groups that are recognized. Because these dialects varied from place to place, I decided to choose one dialect to look at, that being the Chistavin dialect. First off, how different is Aragonese to Catalan and Spanish? Let's look at a few differences in phonology. In Latin, the consonant clusters LT and CT became IT. For example, the same much or many in Aragonese,
muito,
compared to Catalan
molt,
and the Spanish.
mucho,
Another example, the word for milk in Aragonese.
leit,
llet, leche,
A lot of times, short E and O are diphthongized. For example, the number 8 in Aragonese,
oito,
in Catalan,
huit,
and in Spanish.
ocho,
In Latin, GE and GI alongside J, which would be y, often become CH. For example, the word for people in Aragonese,
cent,
in Catalan,
cent,
and in Spanish.
gente,
Occitano-romance often drops final E and O, but Aragonese retains that final O. Most people assume this to be from Spanish influence. We saw this before in the word,
oito,
huit, ocho,
meaning 8. Metathesis often creates new consonant clusters. For example, the verb meaning to buy in Aragonese,
crompar,
in Catalan,
comprar,
and also in Spanish.
comprar,
I should point out that some words have different dialectal forms. For example,
muito,
can also be
muto,
or,
molto,
and also the word for milk we saw earlier.
leit,
This can also be.
let,
But highlighting these differences aside, how does Aragonese work? Let's look at a few sentences and see how Aragonese works. This sentence means, I see birds when we go to the park.
peigo es muy xons quan im al parque. Peigo es muy xons quan vom al parque.
The main verb in this sentence
Veyer,
is conjugated for the first person singular. Oftentimes, like other Romance languages, different persons and numbers often have irregular conjugations. Next, we see the definite article, which agrees in both number and gender, here in the masculine plural. Masculine nouns usually end in O, or a consonant, and feminine nouns usually end in A, which is a common pattern in Romance languages. We also see a shortened form of the definite article in the word for to the. This type of contraction often occurs in Aragonese and is very common in other Romance languages too, like in Portuguese or Italian. We also see the verb for to go.
ir,
However, it looks a little different to the conjugation groups here, doesn't it? Depending on the dialect, many verbs have conjugations which differ from another dialect, and sometimes infinitives of those verbs often look different as well. Here's a sentence meaning we don't study a lot on Tuesdays.
No estudiam guaire es martes.
This looks quite similar to the Catalan sentence,
No estudiem gaire dimarts.
but in Spanish this would be,
No estudiamos mucho los martes.
while the vocabulary is almost the same, Occitano-romance has a different word for a lot than in other Romance languages. Typically there are two words to indicate a lot in the positive or not a lot in the negative, whereas in Spanish there's just one word. Here's a sentence meaning he bought a house 3 months ago.
Él compró una casa fa 3 meses.
First off, in parentheses, we have a subject pronoun. Subject pronouns, like in other Romance languages, can be dropped, because the verb conjugation indicates the person and number, so within context, you don't need the subject pronoun. Also, we see the indefinite article. Like the definite articles, they also have inflections for singular and plural, and masculine and feminine. In Eastern Aragonese, the periphrastic past is used. Some people say this comes from Catalan influence, while others suggest it came naturally. In Eastern Aragonese, this sentence would be,
Él va comprar una casa fa 3 meses.
to use the periphrastic past, you use the verb to go,
Ir.
plus the infinitive of the main verb. Note that for the periphrastic past, there are different conjugated forms of the verb to go. And one more sentence. This sentence means, my dog will eat some for dinner.
El mio can enmincharà una miqueta ta cenar.
First, we have the verb meaning to eat.
Minchar.
Here, it's in the future inflection, with
Haber.
and its conjugated forms as a suffix on the infinitive, which is done in most Romance languages. This form might look a little different, but it's a cognate to Occitan mangia and Italian mangiare. You also might have noticed this word en. En is a partitive pronoun, which indicates a portion of the object. Another related pronoun is e or be, which is the locative pronoun, showing where something takes place. For example, have you arrived already?
Ja has arribau?
Alongside en, we also have this word meaning a little.
Una mica.
You might have noticed that it sounded a little different. That's because this is the diminutive form.
Una miqueta.
Also notice the preposition for,
Ta.
which is cognate to Gascon and ta. Depending on the dialect, another word,
Pa.
is used instead. And also notice at the beginning of the sentence we have the possessive here. As in other Romance languages like Italian or Catalan, definite articles are used before the possessive as either an adjective or pronoun. Aragonese is a very special Romance language. It lies between the center point of Occitano-romance and Ibero-romance, showing how this type of influence can affect one language. Some features may resemble one more than the other, but that's to be expected in language families. Oftentimes, features of one language may look like features from another language, and so on. So let me ask you, to Aragonese speakers, which dialect or dialects can you understand the least? And how difficult do these differences make communication? Do you often just switch to Spanish instead? And to speakers of other Romance languages, which similarities or differences make Aragonese understandable? I'd like to thank you all for watching this video of mine, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, peace.